Hey folks, I'm John from Electronic Audio Experiments, and today I'm here to talk about our Halberd Overdrive. We've been making the Halberd since about 2018, but while making some demos for our newer products, I realized it would be fun to revisit some of our back catalogs. So this is me digging into what is still one of my favorite pedals that we make, so I can tell you a little bit more about it. So for those who are new to us or new to this pedal, the Halberd is a medium gain discrete transistor overdrive, and it was my attempt to create sort of the ideal medium gain overdrive. And for me, that consists of four qualities. First is a wide dynamic range. The Halberd runs internally at about 24 volts, which gives it a huge signal swing. So it's great for hot instruments, line level signals, pushing amplifiers super hard, pushing other pedals super hard. Now, somewhat complementary to this, the second quality is a smooth transition into overdrive. So for a lot of very dynamic pedals, you have this range where it's absolutely clean, and then it gets crunchier as you dig in. You can feel that threshold. But the Halberd has a very soft transition into overdrive, which I think is an essential quality to its sound. The third quality is a control over the input bass response. On the Halberd, you have this depth control, which is basically a pre-gain shelving filter, but I like to describe it as a gain control just for the low frequencies, because that's what it feels like it's doing. And indeed, it really is essential for controlling the right hand, the picking attack feel of this pedal, going from tight and chimey to more spongy and full-bodied. I think this is really the heart and soul of this pedal. And finally, the fourth thing is an extended frequency response. While a lot of overdrives are rightfully quite mid-focused, I wanted this to kind of sit in that transparent overdrive niche without being overly bland. So it's got a wide frequency response. It's going to reproduce what you put into it, but it will keep things focused in order to keep the overdrive response as pleasant as possible. Now, as for the overdrive quality of the Halberd itself, some have likened it to a solid-state amp meeting a tweed Fender. In reality, I feel like the best description actually comes from my friend Philippe at Caroline Guitar Company, which is that the Halberd feels like it has more gain than it actually does. And there are probably 10,000 overdrive pedals out there, so you just have to take my word for it. The feel of this pedal is what sets it apart, in my opinion. Anyway, next I'm going to talk about the controls, but before that, I'm going to do a quick little rundown of my setup. So first, I'm using this G&L ASAT Classic. I've had this guitar for a long time. This is one of the earliest EAE shop guitars, and it is unremarkable in all the best ways. It is to me kind of what like a Tele style guitar ought to sound like, and it has a super beefy bridge pickup for a Tele, so it's very well balanced. This is going, of course, into the Halberd. Halberd comes in a lot of colors. This is a black one with kind of a textured finish. It's pretty cool. And that is going into my 70s Fender Twin Reverb. It is one of the later Silverface models, but before they added the pull boost on the master volume. So it's basically like an early 70s with a master volume that does what it's supposed to do and not a bunch of other stuff. Finally, that is going into my trusty Oma ribbon mic. I love this mic. It's got a very smooth quality to it, which is a great counterbalance to the brighter clean tones I tend to go for. And that's going into my Mo2 interface with no other processing applied. Here is my clean guitar tone. You can hear how beefy the bridge pickup on this ASAT is. Now, I'm going to start with the Halberd more or less all knobs at noon. And that's a pretty well-balanced overdrive right there. Pulling the pre-gain control back. You can hear some of that soft clipping I'm talking about. And if you want a little bit less, you can pull it back to essentially pure clean. Now, the post-gain control has a ton of headroom to compensate if you wish. And and you can get some great clean boost tones out of this as a result. Bringing the gain, the pre-gain back up a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the depth control. Obviously, there's more range to explore on the pre-gain, but the depth is really integral to how the gain response behaves. So if I pull depth back, we get something more chimey. You can also hear that it gets cleaner as I do this. This is great on neck pickups. And of course, you can also push the depth in the other direction to get a lot more bass. So that's kind of an idea of what this control is doing. Now, back to pre-gain, I'm going to show you the higher reaches of this control and then add in some depth as well. So it's still articulate, but definitely has more of that low frequency beef going on. Now, if you want to push it even further, we'll go just max on everything. You can really hear a hard edge that comes in at higher pre-settings, and this is where the tone control comes in. The tone control is simple. It's just a shelving low-pass filter that is going to cut off some of those harsher high frequencies, but it leaves a little bit behind. At the lower settings, it's almost more like a bass boost, especially if you increase the post gain. Now, conversely, if you go the other way, we're going to back off the gain a little bit. This is a more wide open, kind of ragged thing. This is where the extra chimey, twangy, good stuff lives. Now, of course, the post control has an enormous amount of range. You'll once again have to take my word for it. The amp is cooking at about 85 dB in the room right now, and any more than that, I definitely want to have my earplugs in. Anyway, to extend the range of all these controls is the voice toggle. Right now we have it in the center or normal position, but we can go down into deep mode, which is going to add a full range gain boost, which feels like a bass boost, or we can go in the up position or clang mode, which is a very sharp mid-focus boost. So deep mode. Back to normal. Deep mode once more. So that gives you an idea. This is very much like a feel thing. If I go to the neck pickup, it's a bit more dramatic. So it's like it increases the low frequency bandwidth, of course, but it also just makes it feel more spongy and more fuzzy. Now, clang mode is the opposite in every way. I love this mode on a neck pickup because it gets you this really tight articulation, but you still have the sort of fullness of a neck pickup. So they just balance each other out really nicely. On a bridge pickup, you're getting into kind of shellacky territory. Anyway, a lot of stuff does the clang. I mean, you know, we got it. Now, there are some fun things you get at the extremes of the EQ. For example, if you pull tone and depth all the way back, this is the closest you'll get to like a classic, like very mid-focus, like tube screamery overdrive. And that just goes to show that even though these controls have some extreme ranges, they're all valid in the grand scheme of the user interface here. So that's the voice control. And there are a lot of other nuances and interactions here. This is especially true if you're using a bass. You know, a lot of bass players will live in deep mode, but also you can go into clang mode and increase the depth and decrease the tone, and get some really useful sounds that way too. So the combinations are virtually endless for such a deceptively simple pedal, but hopefully that gives you some idea. I'd be remiss not to include some bass clips, so I've busted out the God City Craftsman bass, and I'm going right into my twin because 12-inch speakers sound awesome on bass. I don't know what you're talking about. Here's a quick clean tone. Anyway, that's a taste of it on bass. More on that another time, perhaps. So if you made it this far, how about a little story time? So the Halberd originated as the preamp section of Sending V1. At the time, all I wanted was to get the sound of that pedal with the preamp up and the mix all the way down. Easy, right? Well, by the time I added an input bass control and increased the range of gain and added a tone control, it became this beast that lived on my breadboard for about 18 months. My two sounding boards during that development process were Brian Sowers of Sour Sound Transformers. He makes the excellent output transformers that you find in Benson amps, among others. And Maddie from Electro Foods Pedals, who is an absolute dirt magician, makes some of my favorite dirt circuits ever, honestly. She is a rock star. And so, you know, like with these two brilliant minds kind of living in my inbox all the time, we were chasing down this very strange clipping artifact that was some consequence of the huge dynamic range and using discrete silicon transistors. At the time, the best solution was to use a germanium transistor. And so Halberd V1 was built with germanium. Eventually, we got sick of using them. I recall this one night where Brad and I had to desolder the germanium transistors off like 30 boards because some of them couldn't handle the 24-volt power supply. it really sucked. And so for Halberd V2, the primary goal was to make it sound just as good with no germanium. The other goal was to address our one major user complaint, which is that it just didn't have enough gain. One of my biases as a designer is having a heavy right hand, but for people who don't play as hard or who are using really low output pickups like a Fender Jag or something, they weren't getting the full range of gain out of the pedal. So the voice toggle, in addition to dramatically altering the frequency response, is also there to add some more gain for those who need it and further widen the range of the pedal. So for that reason, I consider V2 to be pretty much an across-the-board improvement. And then you get other nice quality of life things like a smaller enclosure size, less current draw because we got way better at power supply design, that sort of thing. Anyway, there's probably more I could say about this, but at the end of the day, I am just grateful that it's found its way onto such a cool variety of pedal boards. I'm grateful that this pedal has connected with people and is helping you make your noise a little bit louder. So I've recorded about 1 million different stacking combos with this and will continue doing so until the end of time. But I'm going to take you out with my favorite one, which is the Halberd into the longsword. I think it's a great way to tighten up a humbucker guitar, especially one that's tuned down a bit. So yeah, enjoy some riffs. I've been John, and I'll see you later. Thanks, everyone.